So we are in our third session of the Judges. We are in chapter 10, but we're going to do a very brief review of the previous 10 chapters. So if you were to ask yourself, what time period does this consist of? This is after the Exodus, taking place during, I should say, or shortly after the reign of Joshua. So our Bible starts with Adam, which is in creation. It's the Garden of Eden. And then we go down the list: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Melhalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Arphaxad, Selah, Eber, and Peleg. Now, the names that jump out to us most likely is Adam and Noah. And remember, Noah had the flood, and that was when the whole landscape of the earth changed, and that's when people started living shorter. So we see Abraham, Isaac, and Isaac had 12 sons. Isaac's name was changed to what, Michelle? I'm sorry, Jacob's name was changed to what, Michelle?
Israel.
Good job, Lukey. So, yes, is the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 sons. We know about Joseph because Joseph was in Egypt. And then while Israel has been saved by the actions of God through Joseph in Egypt, Egypt starts persecuting them severely. They cry out to God. Moses enters the scene. They exit Egypt because of what, Michelle? Well, they did. They left through the Red Sea. Good job. We also had a bunch of plagues that happened during that time. And then we see that segues into Joshua. Moses never made it into the promised land, but Joshua did. And during the time of Joshua, the people listened and they leaned towards God. They leaned in, and even the elders, all the way up until the time of the elders who lived during the time of Joshua, died. Israel followed after God. Now, what we learn in the Judges is that the people didn't listen. And so in chapters 1 and 2 and the beginning of 3, it shares with us how the people did not listen or did not follow the ways that were instructed by Joshua. As such, God gave them over to the idols that they were serving, and because of that, their neighbors came after them. The oppression would get so fierce that Israel would cry out to God and ask for them to save them. They would throw these idols away. They would set them on fire. God would raise up a judge. The first judge that we read about was Othniel. Okay? And they were in persecution for 8 years. And after Othniel overthrew the occupying power, they had 40 years of freedom. Then we moved into Ehud. Ehud was the guy who had something wrong with we believe he had something wrong with his right arm. So he was left-handed, and he stabbed the big fat king, and they were under oppression for 18 years, but had 80 years of rest under Ehud. And we have a single liner. Another judge was Shamgar. We know that he killed 600 of the Philistines because the Philistines were an oppressing force. Then we heard about this really cool woman named Deborah, and she had instructed the army general at the time on what to do, and he said he wouldn't do it unless she was there with him. And then she basically said, hey, you're not going to get the glory for this. It's going to be the glory of a woman. And ironically, well, not ironically, the woman that ends up getting credit for it was, I forgot her name. It was Deborah, and it
I was going to say Debbie.
Gosh, I can't remember the woman's name. So essentially, her name was JL. I have a note here. So Deborah used Barak, who was the army general, but the woman that killed the Sisera was JL, and she did it with a tent stake. She drove it through his skull into the ground. Now we get to the time of Gideon. And we talked about Gideon in great detail last week. Gideon was a very timid person that we would perceive that he questioned what was going on, whether or not God was really with them. And every contemporary author that's out there talks about how he's a scaredy cat. He's found threshing wheat in a wine press, which, Miguel, where were we supposed to thresh wheat, or where was the place to thresh wheat?
High on a hill.
That's right, way high up in the mountaintop because the breeze would blow the chaff away. So he's hiding in a wine press doing it because he's afraid of the Midianites that are there. The angel of the Lord appears unto him, says that he's going to be a mighty leader. He questions whether or not this is really what God wants him to do. So he devises this plan to confirm with God that this is what he wants him to do. So he sets his fleece out at nighttime and asks for the fleece to be soaking wet and the ground around it dry. And then he asks a second time, it says, God, just in case this was an accident, I want the fleece to be dry, but I want the ground around it to be soaked. And it is as such. So he gets an army, I want to say, of like 30,000. Yeah, it was 30,000, 32,000 maybe. And God says there's too many people. There's too many people to go up against this army of 40,000, I believe it was. It was like a 2 to 1 odds. And so 22,000 of the men just leave because they were afraid. God excuses them. So now they're down to this really small group of people, 10,000. And God tells Gideon it's still too many. And you need to do this test to pick the men who are drinking from the creek in a certain way. And the only people that are left is 300. We have 300 men that are left against this massive army. And then he goes at nighttime he asks God tells him, if you're still unsure and you're not ready for battle, sneak into the camp and listen to what they're saying. And the men down there were dreaming dreams about how, this mighty loaf came through and wiped them out. And surely this loaf is representative of Gideon and his army against the Midianites and that they're going to lose. So these 300 men gather around the ridge crest of the valley. They have their torches underneath the pottery. They take the pottery off at the same time and they throw it on the ground and shatter it. And as such, the Midianite army is so terrified on what's happening that they all start turning on each other and slaughtering each other. And the Israelites have a great victory through Gideon. Now, Gideon, we learn, had 70 sons. Wasn't it 70 sons? Yeah. He had 70 sons. Okay. And the very tail end of his life, he asks for, these little pieces of gold that came off of everybody's ears, signifying the men. He melts it down, forms it into some kind of idol, and it creates a snare amongst him and others. He has these 70 sons. One of the sons that we read about, that this whole last session that we talked about, was a son by the name of Abimelech. Now, Abimelech was the son of a concubine. Yes, the son of a concubine. Essentially, it was definitely not someone who he was married to. It was just a woman that was out there. And Abimelech, we learned through a very long section in Judges, wanted to be king. He wanted the power. So he knew he had there was a total of 70 of them. So he authorized money from his fellow kinsmen who were of the concubine as well, like of the land where the concubine lived, to give him money from the temple of the false god that they were worshiping, to hire a band of men to go kill all his brothers. And 68 of his brothers are killed. One escapes. His name was Jotham. He says out a decree, basically, conferring with Israel, like, what you have done is just so wicked. You could have gone to the strong trees of Lebanon. You could have gone to this, but instead you went to this bramble bush, which is going to choke you out. And after a long, drawn-out battle and back and forth that happens, we see that Abimelech chases this group of people into the city next to a very high tower, and a woman throws over a piece of a millstone on top of his head and crushes him, and he dies. So that gets us into chapter 10, and we're just going to start going. Again, I won't these chapters read like a shooting script, as if you were directing a film. The way that they're recorded, there's not much for me to add. If there is something for me to add, I'll jump in. So,
Elliot, I have a question real quick.
Yo.
The judges, were these men all in succession, like one right after another?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you notice that they follow their genealogy. So if you see that, like, for instance, when we saw Gideon, we saw that he had 70 sons. Abimelech was one of his sons, and he tried to take hold of the throne as a judge. But we see that there were people that wiped him out. So now when Abimelech's dead, we know when he died. This is now going to go into this person named Tola.
Okay.
So it's almost like in rapid succession, because we also hear about the times that they had 80 years of peace because that person lived 80 years or such, and then after that time they turned away from God and they were in oppression for like 18 years until someone would rise up after being in oppression for 18 years, and they would have this climactic battle. The presence of the Lord would work through these very weak and unlikely vessels, and they would have great victories. And then they would have peace during that time because Israel would remember God and put away all these idols and things like that. But they would eventually get to a time, once those individuals who created law and order were dead, that they just decided to do whatever they thought was right in their own eyes. They didn't adhere to God's law.
Was there still...
There was no king.
Yeah.
Hi.
What was your question, Shelley?
Yeah, so basically the judges were the king.
There was no king.
Well, yeah, so there was no king, but the judge, whoever was in charge at that, was in charge at that time.
Kind of.
Okay.
The only reason I say kind of is the people were basically forcing Gideon to be their king, and he says, "You shall have no king but God. You don't want a king."
Okay, got it.
They were more of like a reference point or a tribal leader.
Okay, got it.
And we will get in a time of the kings. Like that's when we learn about Saul and David and Solomon. Those are actual kings. But during this time, in the beginning of the book, it says that during this time period, God raised up judges. And each one of the judges has something very unique about them. The tail end of what we read is going to be about Samson. And you're going to realize, like, this guy sounds like he might as well have been Superman. You know what I mean? He's awesome. But he's also makes a lot of mistakes. So, chapter 10. After Abimelech, there arose to save Israel Tola, the son of Pua, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in the mountains of Ephraim. He judged Israel 23 years, and he died and was buried in Shamir. After him arose Jair, a Gileadite, and he judged Israel 22 years. Now he had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys. They also had 30 towns, which are called Havoth Jair to this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Kamon. Now, the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroths, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, and the gods of the people of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines. And they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. So the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the people of Ammon. From that year, they harassed and oppressed the children of Israel for 18 years. And all the children of Israel who were on the other side of the Jordan in the land of the Ammonites in Gilead, moreover, the people of Ammon crossed over the Jordan to fight against Judah also, against Benjamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was severely distressed. And the children of Israel cried out to the Lord, saying, "We have sinned against you because we have both forsaken our God and served the Baals." So the Lord said to the children of Israel, "Did I not deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites and from the people of Ammon and from the Philistines? Also the Sidonians and the Amalekites and the Moabites have oppressed you. And you cried out unto me, and I delivered you from their hand. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry out to these gods which you have chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of distress." And the children of Israel said to the Lord, "We have sinned. Do to us whatever seems best to you. Only deliver us this day, we pray." So they put away the foreign gods from among them and served the Lord. And his soul could no longer endure the misery of Israel. Then the people of Ammon gathered together and encamped in Gilead. And the children of Israel assembled together and encamped in Mizpah. And the people, the leaders of Gilead, said one to another, who is this man who will begin the fight against the people of Ammon? Shall he be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead? Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead begot Jephthah. Gilead's wife bore sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, you shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brothers and dwelt in the land of Tob. And worthless men banded together with Jephthah and went out raiding with him. And it came to pass after a time the people of Ammon made war against Israel. And so it was when the people of Ammon made war against Israel that the elders of Gilead went to Jephthah from the land of Tob. And they said to Jephthah, come and be our commander, that we may fight against the people of Ammon. So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, do you not hate me and expel me from my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? So you guys see what's happening here, right? Does anyone see what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, this guy is the son of a harlot, the son of a, he's not, how do I put this? It's like you have a blended family, and the majority of the family, that's through one woman, cast out the brother who's of a different woman. They say, you don't have a part with us. He becomes he's a badass, and he gets a bunch of bad men that are with him, and he basically is running the town. And they see that, and they see that they're in distress, so now they go running back to him. Oh, please, please come help us. And this is his response. Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, this is why we have turned again to you now, that you may go with us to fight against the people of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, if you take me back home to fight against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivers them to me, shall I be your head? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord will be a witness between us if we do not do according to your words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander of them. And Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. So this bandit, who sounds like a pretty rough guy, who probably was, it doesn't say that. I'm not going to go that route. But we know he's part of a band of rough guys. He's a tough guy. We know that already. He was an outcast, and now he's brought back in. He was the outcast. He gets made the leader. Okay? Now Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the people of Ammon, saying, what do you have against me, that you have come to fight against me in my land? And the king of the people of Ammon answered the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel took away thy land, and when they came up out of Egypt, from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok and to the Jordan. Now therefore restore these lands peaceably. So Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the people of Ammon and said unto him, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the people of Ammon. For when Israel came up out of Egypt, they walked through the wilderness as far as the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, please let me pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not heed. And in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but they would not consent. So Israel remained in Kadesh. And they went along through the wilderness and bypassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came to the east side of the land of Moab, and encamped on the other side of Arnon. But they did not enter the border of Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of Heshbon. And Israel said to him, please, let us pass through your land into our place. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together, encamped in Jahaz, and fought against Israel. And the Lord God of Israel delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. Thus Israel gained possession of all the land of the Amorites who inhabited that country. They took possession of all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. And now the Lord God of Israel has disposed the Amorites from before his people Israel. Should you then possess it? Will you not possess whatever Chemosh your God gives you to possess? So whatever the Lord our God takes possession of before us, we will possess. And now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, or king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel? Did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelt in Heshbon and its villages, in Aor and in its villages, and in all the cities along the banks of the Arnon for 300 years, why did you not recover them at that time? Therefore, I have not sinned against you, but you wronged me by fighting against me. May the Lord, the judge, render judgment this day between the children of Israel and the people of Ammon. However, the king, the people of Ammon, did not heed the words of Jephthah that were sent to him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed through Mizpah of Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he advanced toward the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the people of Ammon shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it as a burnt offering. So Jephthah advanced toward the people of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands. And he defeated them from Aroer as far as Minnith, 20 cities, and to Abel Kirim with a very great slaughter. Thus the people of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. So, everyone seems to know about this particular oath that this man made because of the next slide that you guys are going to see. And it sucks. The problem is that this is almost a pagan practice. This wasn't necessary, but we're going to read what happened.
It's about the daughter, right?
Yeah, when Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing, and she was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he tore his clothes and said, alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You are among these who trouble me. For I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it. It's his only kid, and it's his daughter. She sees daddy's coming home, and she's excited. She comes running out of the house with tambourines to celebrate his victory. But he's made this stupid oath that whatever, if God gives him victory, whatever is the first thing that comes out of his house, he's going to sacrifice unto God. And so he then tears his clothes and says, look, this is what I've done. This is her response. Then she said to her father, let this thing be done for me. Let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander on the mountains and bewail my virginity, my friends and I. So he said, go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her friends and bewailed her virginity on the mountains. And it was so at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, and he carried out his vow with her, which he had vowed. She knew no man, and it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah, the Gileadite. So, I mean, when we read it at face value, guys, which I like to do with the Bible, is we read it at face value. He basically made a promise and didn't have this expectation that it was going to be his daughter coming out of this house. And he kept his oath and did what he said he was going to do. There are a few people that say that that he didn't, in fact, offer his daughter, which I don't think the text plainly says that. They say that, number one, he would have taken, he would have gone to a priest, and the priest would have offered a goat or something along those lines, because that was one of the things that was called out for the sacrifice, and that the Levi priest wouldn't offer a woman, and that XYZ. And there are some compelling arguments, but again, if we're reading it at face values, it really reads like this is what happened. So that's what I think happened. So not only did he do that to his daughter, now his own homies, so to speak, have got a problem now. Then the men of Ephraim gathered together and crossed over toward Zaphon and said to Jephthah, why did you cross over to fight against the people of Ammon and not call us to go with you? We will burn your house down with fire. So they basically wanted to go with him because the battle was so hot, and they were mad at what was happening because of this enemy. And because he didn't bring them with them, those people, which would be because Ephraim, remember, Ephraim was one of the sons of Joseph. Ephraim is now going to burn down Jephthah's house. So this is what he says. My people and I were in a great struggle with the people of Ammon. And when I called you, you did not deliver me out of their hands. So when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over against the people of Ammon. And the Lord delivered me into the hand, and the Lord delivered them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? Now Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. And the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim because they said, you Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites. The Gileadites seized the fords of the Jordan before the Ephraimites arrived. And when the Ephraimite who had escaped said, let me cross over, the men of Gilead would say to him, are you an Ephraimite? If he said no, then they would say to him, then say Shibboleth. And he would say Sibboleth, for he could not pronounce it right. Then they would take him and kill him at the fords of the Jordan. There fell at that time 42,000 Ephraimites, and Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried among the cities of Gilead. So this last little part, what he's doing is if Miguel was trying to decipher whether or not I was from where I said I was, if I said that I was coming from Mexico and I was born and raised in Mexico, and he says to me, all right, tell me how to pronounce tortilla, and I tell him tortilla, he would know that I'm not a local because I'm not enunciating it appropriately. Or if he says Jose, and I say, yeah, it's Josie, Jose, Josie, he would know immediately that I did not know the dialect. So this was the test that they had devised. He even tells him, I want you to go ahead and say Shibboleth, but they would say Thiboleth because they couldn't enunciate the ch sound. And so that was the test that they had given to see if these were of the enemy, of their own people, kind of a deal. So we see him dying, and after him, Ibzan of Bethlehem judged Israel, and he had 30 sons, and he gave away 30 daughters in marriage and brought in 30 daughters from elsewhere for his sons. He judged Israel 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. After him, Elon, the Zebulunite, judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon, the Zebulunite, died and was buried at Aijalon in the country of Zebulun. After him, Abaddon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, judged Israel. He had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 young donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. Then Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, died and was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim in the mountains of the Amalekites. And again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now there was a certain man from Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now, therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink. Do not eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. And he shall be delivered, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. So the woman came out and told her husband, saying, a man of God came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God. Very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. And he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. Now drink no wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, oh, my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born. There's a lot of people that draw conclusions on the wording that's here. where it's like this guy Manoah's like, all right, you came to my wife, you better come to both of us because I want to make sure we're doing this right. Okay, I don't know that I trust that my wife's telling me the truth. And if you guys remember, Paul, I believe it was, took a Nazirite vow as well, and that's when he shaved his head and created it as an offering in the temple and took no strong drink. And there were some things that you would do to perform your vow. And so in this instance, he's being set apart. He's not allowed to drink wine. He's not supposed to let a razor come upon his head. He's not supposed to be around dead bodies. I mean, there was a list of things that they were supposed to do. Okay, so here we are, and God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came to the woman again, and she was sitting in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her, so she's by herself. Then the woman ran in haste to her husband and said, "Look, the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me," and said to him, "Look, now the man who came to me the other day has just now appeared to me." So Manoah arose and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he said to him, "Are you the man who spoke to this woman?" And he said, "I am." And Manoah said, "Now let your words come to pass. What will be the boy's rule of life and his work?" So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor may she drink wine or similar drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I commanded her, let her observe." Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you." And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Though you detain me, I will not eat your food. But if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord." For Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "What is your name? That when your words come to pass, we may honor you." And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful?" So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it upon the rock of the Lord. And he did a wondrous thing while Manoah and his wife looked on. It happened as a flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. And when Manoah and his wife saw this, they fell on their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and his wife, Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, "We shall surely die because we have seen God." Okay, so this is one of those instances where many scholars agree that this is a Christophany, which is a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ before he was in the flesh. He's an angel that accepted worship. No angels were allowed to accept worship except for Christ. One of Jesus's name, if we look at it, he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, right? And we see right here, he goes, "Seeing that my name is wonderful." Okay? And we see that he accepted the burnt offering. He ascended into heaven. And we know that the people, after knowing what Moses had said, nobody could see the face of God and live, right? So here he is frightened because he believes that he has just seen God. We shall surely die because we have seen God. And I just love his wife. This is a Michelle comment here. But his wife said to him, "If the Lord had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted our burnt offering and our grain offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things at this time." So the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Mahaneh Dan, between Zorah and Eshtal. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Okay, were the Jews supposed to intermarry with the Philistines, Miguel?
No, they didn't.
They were not allowed to. They were
Nope.
supposed to be set apart. But what does he do?
Found a woman in the Philistines.
That's right. He goes, so he went, and we're going to learn something about him and women. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, "I have seen a woman in Timnah, the daughter of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me as a wife." Then his father and mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among all my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. For at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Was he allowed to be around the wine?
No.
No, here he is in the vineyards. Now, to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after some time, when he returned to get her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees and honey were in the carcass of the lion. And he took some of it in his hands and went along eating. Were you allowed to touch anything dead, Miguel?
No.
Because it was considered unclean.
He was set apart too, Samson.
Yeah, so he's not supposed to go down to other women of another nation. He's not supposed to be in the vineyards, and he's not supposed to be touching a bunch of dead animals. All these things are things he's not supposed to do, right?
Right.
So this kind of sucks, but when he came to his father and his mother, he gave it to them, and they also ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So we're moving on. Now his father went down to the woman, and Samson gave a feast there, for young men used to do so. And it happened when they saw him that they brought 30 companions to be with him. So they put on a party for Samson, and he doesn't have anyone with him, so they give him a best man and a whole wedding party. Okay? And so Samson says to them, Let me pose a riddle to you, and if you can correctly solve and explain it to me within 7 days of the feast, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. But if you cannot explain it to me, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothing. And they said to him, Pose your riddle, that we may hear it. So he said to them, Out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. Now for 3 days they could not explain the riddle. But it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Samson's wife, Entice your husband that he may explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us in order to take what is ours? Is it not so? Then Samson's wife wept on him and said, You hate me. You only hate me. You don't love me. You have posed a riddle to the sons of my people, but you have not explained it to me. And he said to her, Look, I have not explained it to my father or my mother. So should I explain it to you? So the Philistines, we really get an idea of the people, what they were like. They're going to set this woman and her family on fire over these linen garments. And we're also going to get one of my, I don't know why it's so funny to me, but you guys, it probably shouldn't be something I laugh about. But anyways, this is what happens. Now she had wept on him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it happened on the 7th day that he told her, because she pressed him so much. Then she explained the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle. He's speaking here about them enticing his wife to be. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their apparel, and gave changes of clothing to those who had explained the riddle. So his anger was aroused, and he went back up to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. Wow. So Samson, very upset about the fact that they enticed his wife to be, and decides, okay, you want 30 changes of clothes? No problem. He goes and kills 30 of their men and takes their clothes and gives it to them as a gift. Now he's so mad, he goes home, and while he's gone at home at his dad's house, this father of this woman says, well, he's probably not coming back, so we'll go ahead and, marry the best man to Samson to this woman. Why let the wedding go to waste? Just crazy. And so after a while, in the time of the wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat. And he said, let me go into my wife, into her room. But her father would not permit him to go in. For her father said, I really thought that you were thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please, take her instead. That's some dad right there, huh? Nah, my older daughter's ugly. Let me show you the younger one. She's pretty. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put a torch between each pair of tails. Then he had set the torches on fire, and he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines, and burned up both the stalks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines said, who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Etam. Now the Philistines went up, encamped in Judah, and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? So they answered, we have come up to arrest Samson, to do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they do to me, so I have done to them. But they said to him, we have come down to arrest you that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. Then Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves. So they spoke to him, saying, no, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand. But we will surely not kill you. And they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire. His bonds broke loose from his hands, and he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached it out of his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey I have slain 1,000 men. And so it was, when he had finished speaking, that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called that place Ramath Lahi. Then he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said, you have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. And now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank. And his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called its name En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw a harlot there, and he went into her. When the Gazites were told, Samson has come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They were quiet all night, saying, in the morning when it is daylight, we will kill him. And Samson lay low till midnight. Then he arose at midnight, took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 gate posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Afterward, it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, entice him and find out where his great strength lies, and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him and afflict him, that every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you. Such a loving woman, right? Tell me where it is so we can afflict you. And Samson says to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings not yet dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings not yet dried, and she bound him with them. Now men were lying in wait, staying with her in the room. And she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he broke the bowstrings as a strand of yarn breaks when it touches the fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, look, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with. So he said to her, if they bind me securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall be weak like any other man. Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And the men were lying in wait, staying in the room, but he broke them off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with. And he said to her, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom. So she wove it tightly with the batten of the loom, and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled out the batten and the web from the loom. So she literally tied up his hair in 7 braids and nailed it to the ground. And he stood up and ripped the wood out of the ground, still attached to his hair. But we'll notice that each time he's giving her a little bit more information that he shouldn't be. Each time she's enticing him. I don't know how she's enticing him, but women can be very forthcoming in getting men to divulge information. Right? Why are you laughing over there, babe? Now, here's the sad part. No, she says to him, how can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart and said to her, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up once more, for he has told me all his heart. So the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hand, and she lulled him to sleep on her knees, and called for a man, and had him shave off his 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. So he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. Then the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza. They bound him with bronze fetters, and he became a grinder in the prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaven. So the King James does a better job. This is the New King James. The King James does a better job saying is that she sought him earnestly with tears, right? She went from enticing him to she begged and cried and pestered and just nagging him with heavy tears. And he got so far to the point that he just told her. Now, do you remember the 2 sons of it's Ishmael? Actually, it was Ishmael. It was Esau and Jacob, right? Wasn't that Ishmael's kids?
Yes.
Okay. So remember we hear that verse Esau I have hated. Remember that?
Yes, but Jacob I
Because-
love.
Because what happened with Esau? He sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. He had everything going for him. He was first in line. He was going to get all the land. He was going to inherit everything, and he gave it all away for a bowl of soup because he was hungry. He gave it away. I think that's very similar to here, where Samson just gave away the gift that he had from God. And notice that the power never came from his hair. The power came from God. It says right here, but he did not know that the Lord had departed from him. So let's see what happens next. His hair is starting to grow. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, "Our God is delivered into our hands, Samson, our enemy." When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, "Our God is delivered into our hands, our enemy, the destroyer of our land, and the one who multiplied our dead." So it happened when their hearts were merry that they said, "Call for Samson that he may perform for us." So they called for Samson from the prison, and he performed for them. And they stationed him between the pillars. Then Samson said to the lad who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars which support the temple, so that I can lean on them." Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, about 3,000 men and women on the roof, watching while Samson performed. Then Samson called to the Lord, saying, "O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for mine 2 eyes." And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, one on his right and the other on his left. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. And his brothers and all his father's household came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father Manoah. And he had judged Israel 20 years. So that's the story of Samson and Delilah. And that's it for today. Any questions?
No.